Let's begin. But first, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Sky High Stories. Daniel Hayes felt proud that night. The grand crystal chandelier above him sparkled like a crown over his success. The ballroom of the Imperial Grand Hotel was filled with powerful businessmen, elegant women in designer gowns, and cameras flashing from every direction. It was supposed to be his night. A celebration dinner. A new partnership. A new beginning. Beside him stood his wife, Vanessa Blake, the woman he once called his dream. She wore a shimmering silver gown that hugged her perfectly. Diamonds rested on her neck. She smiled confidently as guests congratulated them. "Daniel, you've truly upgraded your life," one guest whispered with admiration. Daniel smiled proudly. Upgraded. Yes, that was the word he always used in his mind. He had upgraded his wife. Upgraded his lifestyle. Upgraded his future. 3 years ago, he had walked away from a simple, emotional, soft-spoken woman who never quite fit into rooms like this. Sophia Carter. He had convinced himself she was too ordinary for the empire he wanted to build. Tonight proved he made the right decision. Or so he thought. The host stepped onto the stage and tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "we are honored tonight by the presence of a very special guest, one of the most influential investors in the country." The room fell silent. Even Daniel straightened his suit jacket. This man has the power to transform companies overnight. Excitement filled the air. Then the large ballroom doors slowly opened. Every head turned. Whispers began immediately. A tall man in a perfectly tailored black suit entered first. Calm, powerful, confident. His presence alone demanded respect.
Look at the
People
chandeliers.
recognized him
Everyone
instantly.
is watching.
Alexander Reed,
The entrance
the
is
billionaire.
magnificent.
Daniel
Look at
felt
the
his heart
chandeliers.
race.
Everyone
If
is
Alexander
watching.
invested in his company
The
tonight,
entrance is
everything would
magnificent.
change.
Look at the
But
chandeliers.
then, someone
Everyone is
stepped in
watching.
beside him. The room
The
grew
entrance is
quieter.
magnificent.
Daniel's breath
Look at the
stopped.
chandeliers.
Sophia.
Everyone is
She
watching.
wasn't the same woman he remembered.
The entrance is
She
magnificent.
walked with quiet confidence.
Look at the chandeliers.
Her posture
Everyone
straight.
is watching.
Her expression calm.
The entrance
She
is
wore a deep
magnificent.
emerald gown
Look
that
at the
made her glow
chandeliers.
under the golden
Everyone
lights.
is watching.
No loud jewelry.
The entrance
No
is
desperate need for
magnificent.
attention.
Look at the
She didn't
chandeliers.
need it.
Everyone is
Because she
watching.
owned the room without trying.
The entrance is
And she was
magnificent.
holding Alexander
Look at
Reed's
the
hand.
chandeliers.
Daniel
Everyone is
felt as if the
watching.
air had been pulled from his
The
lungs.
entrance is magnificent.
Vanessa's smile slowly
Look at the
faded.
chandeliers.
Guests
Everyone
began
is
whispering
watching.
louder now. "Isn't
The
that
entrance is
Daniel's ex-wife?
magnificent. Look
She
at the
looks
chandeliers.
different."
Everyone is watching.
"No, she looks powerful."
The entrance is magnificent.
Daniel couldn't move.
Look at the
The
chandeliers.
woman he once called
Everyone is
ordinary now
watching.
stood beside one of the richest
The
men in the
entrance is
country,
magnificent.
not as
Look at
decoration.
the chandeliers.
As his equal,
Everyone is watching.
Alexander leaned slightly towards
entrance is
Sophia and said
magnificent.
something that made her
Look
laugh
at the
softly.
chandeliers.
That
Everyone
laugh,
is watching.
Daniel hadn't heard it in years.
The entrance is
And
magnificent.
suddenly, for the
Look at the
first time since
chandeliers.
his divorce,
Everyone is watching.
Daniel Hayes felt something
The
he never
entrance is
expected to feel
magnificent.
again.
Look at the
Regret.
chandelier.
3 years earlier, before the grand hotel lights, before the billionaire, before the regret, there was a small house filled with warmth. Daniel Hayes and Sophia Carter had not started their marriage with luxury. They started with hope. When they first met, Daniel was ambitious but struggling. He worked long hours in a small marketing firm, dreaming of building his own company one day. Sophia worked at a local publishing office. She was calm, intelligent, and quietly strong. She believed in Daniel before anyone else did. When his business idea sounded unrealistic to others, she stayed up late helping him plan. When he doubted himself, she reminded him of his potential. When he had no money, she gave him her savings without hesitation. They were not rich, but they were peaceful. For years, their life was simple. Small dinners at home, movie nights on the couch, long conversations about dreams. Daniel used to look at Sophia and say, "When I make it big, you'll be the queen of my empire." She would smile softly and reply, "I don't need an empire. I just need us." But something slowly began to change. As Daniel's company started growing, so did his ego. New clients, bigger meetings, expensive suits, luxury events. He entered a world where image mattered more than loyalty. And that's where he met Vanessa Blake. Vanessa was everything Sophia was not: glamorous, bold, socially connected. She knew how to command attention in a room. She wore confidence like perfume. At first, Daniel told himself she was just a business contact. But Vanessa praised him constantly. "You deserve more," she would say. "You're meant for elite circles. You've outgrown your old life." Those words began to echo in his mind. Outgrown. He started seeing Sophia differently. Her simple dresses embarrassed him at formal events. Her quiet nature felt boring beside Vanessa's charm. Her emotional depth felt heavy compared to Vanessa's excitement. One evening after a corporate dinner, Daniel snapped. "You don't fit into my world anymore," he told Sophia coldly. The words hit her like glass. She stood frozen in their kitchen, still holding the dinner plate she had warmed for him. "I thought I was your world," she whispered. Daniel didn't answer. He had already started drifting. Days turned into arguments. Arguments turned into silence. Silence turned into distance. Sophia tried to fix things. She suggested counseling. She tried changing her style. She attended business dinners despite feeling uncomfortable. But Daniel's heart was already chasing something else, or someone else. The night he asked for divorce was cold and quiet. He didn't shout. He didn't look angry. He simply looked detached. "This isn't working anymore," he said. Sophia stared at him, her eyes red but steady. "Is it because of her?" she asked softly. Daniel didn't deny it. That silence was answer enough. Something inside Sophia broke that night, but she didn't beg. She didn't scream. She didn't fight. After a long pause, she nodded slowly. "If you believe you'll be happier without me," she said, "then I won't stand in your way." Daniel almost expected drama. Tears. Desperation. But instead, she packed quietly over the next few days. On the final morning, she left her wedding ring on the bedside table. Under it, a small handwritten note. "I loved you when you had nothing. I hope the world you're choosing loves you the same way." Daniel didn't react much at the time. He told himself it was necessary. He told himself he deserved better. He told himself Sophia was too small for the life he was building. Within months, he was publicly dating Vanessa. Within a year, he married her in a grand ceremony filled with flashing cameras and luxury decorations. And as he stood beside Vanessa, watching guests admire his new bride, Daniel believed one thing with full confidence. He had finally married his dream woman. He never realized that sometimes dreams look beautiful from far away, but they cost more than you can imagine. The wedding was everything Daniel had imagined. Crystal chandeliers. Imported flowers. A 7-tier cake covered in gold details. Influential guests. Media coverage. Social media posts with captions like, "Power couple. A match made for success. The future of the elite." Vanessa Blake stood beside him in a custom-designed gown that cost more than Daniel's first car. She looked flawless, confident, victorious. And Daniel felt proud. This was the life he had worked for. Luxury cars replaced his old sedan. A penthouse apartment replaced the small home he once shared with Sophia. Private parties replaced quiet movie nights. Vanessa fit perfectly into this world. She knew how to charm investors. She knew which designer brands mattered. She knew which people were worth knowing. At events, she would wrap her arm around Daniel and whisper, "See? This is where you belong." And Daniel believed her. For the first year, everything felt exciting. They traveled to Paris for Fashion Week. They posted yacht photos in Dubai. They attended elite charity galas. Daniel's followers doubled online. His company expanded. His confidence grew. Whenever Sophia's name crossed his mind, which was rare, he would quickly dismiss it. "She wouldn't survive in this world," he once told Vanessa. Vanessa smirked. "Some women are meant to watch from the outside." Daniel laughed. He truly believed he had upgraded his life. But perfection is easy to display. It is harder to live. The first crack appeared in private. Vanessa hated hearing the word budget. When Daniel suggested reducing expenses on a vacation, she frowned. You're not thinking big enough, she said sharply. Rich men don't calculate. Daniel brushed it off. The second crack came when a business deal fell through. Daniel returned home frustrated. Instead of comfort, Vanessa gave criticism. You shouldn't have trusted that investor, she said coldly. Alexander Reed would never make that mistake. The name stayed in Daniel's mind. Alexander Reed. A billionaire known for smart investments and ruthless precision. Vanessa admired him openly. Sometimes too openly. Daniel began noticing something else. Vanessa loved attention, especially from powerful men. At parties, she laughed a little longer than necessary. She maintained eye contact just a second too long. She compared Daniel to other executives. Look at them, she once said during a gala. They're already expanding overseas. The admiration he once felt started turning into pressure. Their penthouse looked like a magazine cover. But it felt cold. They rarely ate dinner together without arguing. Vanessa demanded constant upgrades. A bigger car. A private membership club. A beach property investment. Every request was framed the same way. If you want to stay relevant. Daniel worked harder than ever. Longer hours. Riskier deals. More loans. He told himself it was temporary. He told himself this was the price of greatness. But sometimes, late at night, when Vanessa was asleep, Daniel would sit alone in the dark living room. The city lights reflected against the glass walls. And in that silence, he remembered something small. Sophia bringing him tea when he worked late. Sophia asking, "Did you eat?" Sophia smiling without expectation. He would quickly shake the thought away. "No," he would whisper to himself. "I chose better." One evening at a high-profile business dinner, an older investor looked at Daniel thoughtfully. "You've changed," the man said. Daniel smiled proudly. "For the better, I hope." The investor hesitated. "You look successful. But you don't look peaceful." The comment irritated him. Peaceful. Who needed peace when you had power? That night, Vanessa argued with him over seating arrangements at an upcoming gala. "You embarrassed me," she said sharply. "You should have insisted we sit closer to the main investors." "It was just a seat," Daniel replied, exhausted. "To you maybe. To me, it's positioning." Positioning. Everything with Vanessa was about position. Status. Appearance. Winning. There was no softness. No quiet support. No unconditional belief. Just performance. Still, from the outside, Daniel's life looked perfect. Magazine features. Luxury events. A beautiful wife. Growing influence. He began planning a major investment night, one that could take his company to the next level. He needed one powerful investor to say yes. One name mattered most. Alexander Reed. If Alexander attended, Daniel's reputation would skyrocket. Vanessa was especially excited. "If he invests in us," she said, eyes gleaming, "we'll finally be untouchable." Daniel didn't notice the way she said we. He didn't notice the hunger in her voice. He didn't notice that his marriage had quietly turned into a competition for status. All he cared about was proving something. To the world. To himself. Maybe even to Sophia. He didn't know it yet. But the night he was planning, the night that would prove he had married his dream woman, would become the night everything changed. Because sometimes, the life you show the world is only an illusion. And illusions don't survive truth. The day Sophia left Daniel's house, it was raining. Not heavy rain. Just soft, steady drops, like the sky was trying not to cry too loudly. She carried only 2 suitcases. 8 years of marriage reduced to clothes, a few books, and memories she wasn't ready to touch. No dramatic goodbye. No angry speech. No revenge promise. Just silence. She moved into a small apartment across town. It was nothing like the house she once decorated with love. The walls were plain. The furniture was basic. The space felt empty. The first night, she sat on the floor because she hadn't bought a sofa yet. And for the first time since signing the divorce papers, she allowed herself to break. She cried quietly. Not because she lost luxury. Not because she lost status. But because she lost the man she once believed would grow old beside her. For weeks, the pain came in waves. Every corner of her mind carried memories. Every song reminded her of something. Every morning felt heavy. But Sophia was not weak. She was wounded. And there is a difference. Friends expected her to speak badly about Daniel. She didn't. Family members wanted her to fight for more money and settlement. She refused. "I don't want what doesn't want me," she said calmly. Instead of focusing on what she lost, she began asking herself a different question. Who am I without him? For years, she had been Daniel's supporter. Daniel's comfort. Daniel's background strength. Now she had to become her own. She returned to something she had once loved, publishing and storytelling. But this time, she didn't want to work under someone else. She wanted to build something. Sophia remembered her late father's small printing business that had failed years ago due to poor management. The idea returned to her mind. Maybe she couldn't save her marriage. But she could rebuild a dream. Rebuilding was not glamorous. She worked from her dining table. She contacted old suppliers. She faced rejection from banks. She heard people whisper, "Daniel left her for someone better. She'll never match his success." The words hurt. But they also fueled her. Sophia began studying business at night. She attended free workshops. She learned about digital publishing and online platforms. Slowly, carefully, she invested her divorce settlement into restarting a small boutique publishing company. There were days she doubted herself. Days she wanted to call Daniel just to hear a familiar voice. But she never did. Because every time she remembered how easily he walked away, that memory strengthened her spine. Something else changed too. Sophia stopped trying to become someone else. During her marriage, she had tried dressing differently, speaking differently, acting differently at events to fit in. Now she dressed the way she liked. She spoke calmly without forcing boldness. She embraced her quiet strength. And people began noticing. Not loudly, not dramatically, but steadily. Her company gained a few loyal clients. Authors appreciated her honesty. Employees respected her fairness. She wasn't building an empire. She was building stability, peace, self-worth. And that peace showed on her face. The sadness that once lived in her eyes slowly faded. In its place grew something powerful. Confidence without arrogance. Strength without noise. One afternoon, nearly 2 years after her divorce, Sophia received an invitation to a high-level business networking event. She almost declined. Those rooms once reminded her of Daniel. But then she paused. She wasn't Daniel's shadow anymore. She was her own name. So she went. She wore a deep emerald dress, simple, elegant, powerful. Not flashy. Not desperate. When she walked into the event hall, no one saw a divorced woman. They saw a composed business owner. She spoke thoughtfully during a panel discussion about independent publishing. Her ideas were sharp, practical, visionary. And that's when someone noticed her. Not because she was loud, but because she was real. Across the room stood a man listening carefully, calm eyes, measured posture, quiet authority. Alexander Reed. One of the most powerful investors in the country. But Sophia didn't know that yet. She only knew that when he approached her later and said, "Your perspective is refreshing," there was no ego in his tone. Only respect. For the first time in years. Someone saw her. Not as someone's wife. Not as someone's ex. But as Sophia Carter. And that changed everything. Sophia didn't realize it that night. But her silent transformation had prepared her for something bigger than revenge. It had prepared her for alignment. The first time Alexander Reed truly noticed Sophia, it wasn't because of her beauty. It was because of her clarity. At the networking event, while others spoke in polished but empty business language, Sophia spoke with substance. She didn't try to impress. She explained how independent authors were often ignored by major publishing houses. She talked about building platforms that gave writers ownership instead of taking advantage of them. She spoke about sustainability over hype. Her voice was calm, measured, confident. Alexander listened without interrupting. Most people in that room wanted funding. Sophia wanted impact. That difference mattered. After the panel ended, many rushed toward Alexander, offering business cards and exaggerated smiles. Sophia did not. She gathered her notes quietly, preparing to leave. That intrigued him even more. He walked toward her. "Ms. Carter, isn't it?" She looked up, slightly surprised. "Yes." "Your perspective on long-term author partnerships," he said, "was rare." She smiled politely. "Rare or unrealistic?" Alexander allowed himself a small smile. "Rare. Which is why it has value." It was a simple conversation. No dramatic music. No instant sparks. Just mutual respect. Alexander did not flirt. He asked questions. Serious questions. How do you plan to scale without losing control? What's your risk management strategy? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? No one had ever asked her those things during her marriage. Daniel used to make decisions alone. Vanessa probably would have tried to impress Alexander. But Sophia answered honestly. "I don't want the biggest company," she said. "I want the most trusted one." Alexander studied her expression. There was no greed there. No hunger for luxury. Just quiet ambition. That night, he asked for her business proposal. Not because she was charming. Because she was capable. Alexander Reed was not just wealthy. He was disciplined. He had built his empire from calculated risks and sharp instincts. He rarely invested based on emotion. He invested based on potential. And Sophia had potential. Over the next few weeks, they met several times, in boardrooms, cafes, office spaces. Every meeting was professional. Structured. Respectful. Alexander challenged her ideas. Sophia defended them thoughtfully. They disagreed without ego. For the first time since her divorce, Sophia felt intellectually matched. She didn't feel small. She didn't feel compared. She felt equal. And Alexander noticed something else too. She never mentioned her past. Not once. No bitterness. No victim story. Just forward motion. That impressed him more than anything. One evening after a long meeting, rain began pouring outside the office building. Sophia stood near the entrance, waiting for it to slow. Alexander stepped beside her. "You could have chosen a safer path," he said suddenly. She glanced at him. "Safe is comfortable. Comfortable is forgettable." He looked at her carefully. "You've rebuilt yourself," he observed. Sophia paused. "Yes," she said quietly. "I had to." There was weight behind those words. Alexander did not ask about it. He respected silence. Instead, he said something unexpected. "Strength built quietly is the most dangerous kind." For the first time, Sophia felt seen beyond business. Not pitied. Not admired for beauty. But recognized for resilience. After reviewing her company's performance, Alexander made a decision. "I'd like to invest," he said during a formal meeting. Sophia blinked in surprise. "You've reviewed the risks?" she asked carefully. "I have." "And you're comfortable with them?" "I don't invest in perfection," he replied. "I invest in leadership." There was no dramatic celebration. No emotional outburst. But in that moment, Sophia realized something important. This wasn't charity. It wasn't attraction. It was belief. And belief feels different when it comes from someone powerful. As months passed, their professional relationship grew stronger. Success followed. Her company expanded carefully. Revenue increased. Her reputation strengthened. But something else shifted quietly between them. Small conversations after meetings. Shared opinions about books. Moments of laughter over coffee. Alexander admired her discipline. Sophia respected his integrity. He never rushed her. Never crossed boundaries. Never tried to overshadow her. He walked beside her. Not ahead. Not behind. Beside. And one evening, at a charity gala, when photographers asked them to stand closer, Alexander gently offered his hand. Sophia hesitated only for a second. Then she placed her hand in his. Not for status. Not for revenge. But because she felt safe. And powerful. At the same time. That night, pictures circulated online. The headlines were subtle at first. Alexander Reed seen with rising publishing entrepreneur. But one name in the article caught unexpected attention. Sophia Carter. Somewhere across the city, Daniel Hayes would soon see it. And when he did, the illusion he had built for 3 years would begin to shake. At first, Daniel ignored the tension. Every marriage has disagreements, he told himself. Every successful couple faces pressure. But pressure, when ignored, does not disappear. It builds. And in Daniel's penthouse apartment, with its marble floors and glass walls, the cracks were becoming impossible to hide. Daniel's company had grown quickly. Too quickly. To maintain the lifestyle he and Vanessa displayed online, he had taken risks, large investments, aggressive expansions, expensive marketing campaigns. Some worked. Some didn't. But when 2 major contracts unexpectedly failed within the same quarter, the damage was serious. Daniel tried to stay calm. He worked longer hours. He met more investors. He avoided looking worried in public. But Vanessa noticed. Not with concern. With irritation. "You said this year would double our revenue," she reminded him one evening while scrolling through luxury property listings. "It will stabilize," Daniel replied carefully. "Stabilize," she repeated sharply. "That's not growth." Her tone wasn't supportive. It was disappointed. As if he had failed an exam, Vanessa had always admired powerful men. But now, her admiration became comparison. At a private dinner with executives, she leaned toward Daniel and whispered, "Look at Marcus. He just bought his 3rd company this year." Daniel clenched his jaw. "We don't know his debt structure." "That's an excuse," she replied coolly. Later that night, she added, "Alexander Reed expanded during a recession. That's real strategy." The name again. Alexander Reed. Daniel had heard it more frequently in recent months, in business news, investor meetings, and now in his own home. He began feeling something uncomfortable. Competition. Not just in business, but in respect. The arguments became sharper, shorter, colder. Vanessa stopped asking how his day was. Instead, she asked, "Did the investor confirm? Did the deal close? Are we still attending the Monaco event?" Their conversations revolved around money and status. Nothing else. One night, after returning exhausted from work, Daniel found Vanessa dressed elegantly. "Where are you going?" he asked. "Private fundraiser," she replied. "You forgot." "I didn't forget," he said. "I just can't make it tonight." She looked at him with visible disappointment. "You used to care about these things." He almost laughed. "I used to care about peace," he thought. But he didn't say it. Instead, he watched her leave alone. The silence in the penthouse felt heavier than ever. When Daniel and Sophia were married, he had felt admired, valued, supported. Now, he felt evaluated, measured, judged. Vanessa no longer praised him. She critiqued him. "You need better advisors. You need stronger positioning. You need to think bigger. Need. Nothing he did seemed enough. One evening, during a heated argument, Vanessa said something that stayed with him. "I didn't marry you to become average." The word hit harder than she intended. Average. 3 years ago, he had called Sophia ordinary. Now he was being called average. For the first time, a strange realization surfaced in his mind. Maybe the world he chased didn't value loyalty. It valued leverage. At a high-profile gala, Vanessa openly flirted with a well-known investor, laughing loudly, touching his arm lightly. Daniel noticed. Guests noticed. He confronted her later in the car. "That was unnecessary," he said tightly. She looked at him without guilt. "It's networking. There's a difference." She scoffed. "You're becoming insecure." Insecure. That word burned. Because deep down, he knew something was slipping. Not just his finances. His control. His confidence. His image. Late one night, Daniel stood alone in the living room, staring at the city skyline. The same city that once felt like a promise now felt like a battlefield. He tried to remember the last time he felt calm. Truly calm. Not excited. Not admired. Not envied. Just peaceful. A memory appeared uninvited. Sophia sitting across from him at their small dining table, smiling softly as she said, "No matter what happens, we'll figure it out." He closed his eyes quickly. He had convinced himself she was holding him back. But now, standing in a luxurious apartment filled with tension, he began wondering something dangerous. Was she actually the stability he walked away from? Before he could think further, his phone buzzed. A business associate sent him a link to an article. He opened it casually, then froze. The headline read, "Alexander Reed invests in rising publishing entrepreneur Sophia Carter." There was a photo. Sophia standing beside Alexander at a charity gala. Elegant. Confident. Unbothered. Daniel felt something shift in his chest. Not anger. Not pride. Something heavier. Vanessa walked into the room behind him. "Who is that?" she asked, glancing at his phone. Daniel swallowed. "My ex-wife." Vanessa stared at the screen longer than necessary. Then she said quietly, "She upgraded well." The words were meant to be casual, but they felt like a verdict. For the first time since his divorce, Daniel didn't feel like the one who had upgraded. He felt replaced. And suddenly, the grand investment night he had been planning, the night he hoped would restore his dominance, became more than business. It became personal. Daniel Hayes had planned the night down to the smallest detail. The ballroom at the Imperial Grand Hotel shimmered under golden chandeliers. Crystal glasses reflected soft light. A live string quartet played near the stage. Every table carried imported white orchids, Vanessa's choice. This was not just another business event. This was Daniel's comeback. After months of financial pressure and whispers in investor circles, he needed one powerful confirmation that he still mattered. And that confirmation had a name. Alexander Reed. If Alexander invested in his company tonight, the rumors would disappear. The failed contracts would be forgotten. His reputation would rise again. Vanessa stood beside him in a diamond-studded gown, flawless as always. Cameras flashed as they entered. "Tonight changes everything," she whispered. Daniel nodded. He believed it too. The guest list was impressive. CEOs, investors, media personalities. Daniel moved confidently from table to table, shaking hands, laughing at jokes, presenting projections with polished certainty. But inside, his nerves were tight. Every few minutes, his eyes shifted toward the entrance. Waiting. Watching. The event host stepped onto the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced warmly, "we are honored tonight by the presence of one of the most respected investors in the country." A ripple moved through the crowd. Daniel straightened. This man's strategic decisions have transformed industries. "Please welcome, Mr. Alexander Reed." Applause filled the room. Then the doors opened. Alexander entered first. Tall. Composed. Wearing a perfectly tailored black suit. He did not rush. He did not smile excessively. He simply walked with the quiet confidence of a man who never needed approval. Daniel forced a confident smile. This was good. This was exactly what he wanted. But then, someone stepped in beside Alexander. The applause softened into whispers. Daniel's smile froze. Sophia Carter walked into the ballroom. Not timid. Not hesitant. Confident. She wore an emerald gown that moved gracefully as she walked. Her posture was straight. Her expression calm. No trace of insecurity. She did not look like someone seeking revenge. She looked like someone who had already won. And she was holding Alexander's arm. The room shifted. Guests began murmuring. "Isn't that Daniel's ex-wife? She looks different. She looks powerful." Vanessa's grip tightened slightly around Daniel's arm. He couldn't move. He couldn't breathe properly. For 3 years, he had imagined Sophia struggling quietly somewhere, not standing beside a billionaire as his equal. Alexander paused briefly to greet a few executives. Sophia spoke politely, smiling naturally, not performing, not competing, just present. And somehow, she commanded more attention than anyone else in the room. Daniel finally stepped forward to greet them. Professional. Controlled. Mr. Reed, he said, extending his hand. Alexander shook it firmly. Mr. Hayes. Then Daniel's eyes shifted to Sophia. For a brief second, time seemed to rewind. The small house. The kitchen arguments. The wedding ring left behind. But the woman in front of him was not the same woman he left. Good evening, Daniel, she said calmly. No anger. No bitterness. Just distance. Vanessa stepped in smoothly. You didn't mention you knew each other, she said sweetly to Alexander. Alexander glanced at Sophia briefly before replying, Ms. Carter and I work closely together. Work closely. The words landed heavily. Vanessa forced a smile. How impressive. Later in the evening, Daniel presented his company's growth plan on stage. He spoke confidently, projected strength, highlighted future expansion. He emphasized how Alexander's partnership would create unstoppable momentum. Every sentence felt heavier because Sophia was sitting in the front row, listening, watching, not with jealousy, but with quiet evaluation. When Daniel finished, applause followed. He looked toward Alexander. This was the moment. The host returned to the microphone. Mr. Reed has a few words to share. Alexander stepped forward. The room grew silent. He spoke calmly about innovation, long-term strategy, and sustainable leadership. Then he said something that made Daniel's heart pound. Success is not measured by speed, but by foundation. Daniel swallowed. Alexander continued. After reviewing several proposals tonight, I have decided to invest. A pause. Daniel's pulse echoed in his ears. In companies that demonstrate stability, integrity, and consistent leadership. Another pause. Then the final words. Unfortunately, Mr. Hayes' company does not align with my current investment direction. The room went silent. It wasn't loud rejection. It was worse. It was calm. Final. Professional. Daniel felt the blood drain from his face. Vanessa stiffened beside him. Alexander stepped down from the stage. And instead of approaching Daniel, he walked toward Sophia. Cameras captured the moment. The whispers grew louder. Vanessa leaned toward Daniel, her voice tight. You said he was interested. He was, Daniel replied under his breath. Clearly not enough. Her tone was sharp. Public. Visible. A few guests turned their heads. Humiliation spread through Daniel like heat. He looked across the room at Sophia. She wasn't smirking. She wasn't celebrating. She simply stood beside Alexander, calm and dignified. As if this night had nothing to do with revenge. And that hurt more. Because it meant she had moved on fully. Daniel suddenly understood something terrifying. He had lost her long before he realized her worth. And now, he had lost the deal. The image. The control. All in one night. The illusion of his dream life cracked under crystal chandeliers and camera flashes. And this time, there was no one standing quietly beside him saying, "We'll figure it out." The morning after the gala felt heavier than the night itself. Daniel barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the same image. Sophia walking confidently beside Alexander. Not looking back. Not hesitating. By sunrise, the internet had already decided the story. Business blogs analyzed Alexander's rejection. Financial pages questioned Daniel's company stability. Social media compared the ex-wife glow-up to Daniel's failed pitch. The humiliation wasn't loud. It was clinical. Measured. Public. And it was spreading. Vanessa entered the living room dressed sharply, phone in hand. "We need to talk," she said coldly. Daniel rubbed his temples. "Not now." "Yes." Now. She placed her tablet in front of him. A headline flashed across the screen. Reed backs Carter Publishing, Hayes left behind. Below it, a photo of Sophia and Alexander speaking privately at the gala. Poised. Aligned. Powerful. Vanessa crossed her arms. Do you understand what this means? It means he chose another investment, Daniel said flatly. It means, she corrected sharply, that your ex-wife is now sitting at tables you promised me. The words weren't about love. They were about status. Daniel looked up slowly. This isn't about her. It is absolutely about her. Vanessa snapped. You said she was small. You said she wasn't built for this world. Daniel didn't respond. Because now, even he wasn't sure that was true. Vanessa took a step back. I married ambition, she said. Not decline. Decline. The word echoed. 3 years ago, Daniel had walked away from Sophia because he feared stagnation. Now he stood accused of becoming exactly that. As if the morning wasn't sharp enough, Daniel's phone rang. One of his mid-level investors. I saw the event coverage, the man said cautiously. Given Reed's decision, we'll need to reassess our exposure. Reassess. Another word for doubt. Another crack. Daniel hung up and stared at the blank screen. His company wasn't collapsing. But confidence was. And in business, perception often moves faster than numbers. That evening, they attended a smaller networking dinner. One Vanessa insisted they couldn't skip. Appearance matters, she said firmly. But tension followed them into the room. Conversations felt forced. Smiles felt rehearsed. At one point, an executive casually asked Daniel, so what happened with Reed? Before Daniel could answer, Vanessa spoke. Some people just prefer emotional investments over strategic ones. The implication was clear. Sophia. The comment drew a few uncomfortable laughs. Daniel stiffened. That's enough, he muttered under his breath. But Vanessa wasn't done. I just find it fascinating, she continued lightly, how quickly narratives change. The room went silent. Daniel felt eyes on him. Judging. Measuring. He placed his glass down carefully. We're leaving, he said firmly. Vanessa pulled her hand away from his. You're leaving, she corrected. And for the first time since their marriage began. She didn't follow him out. Daniel walked alone to the parking area. Alone. The word felt heavier now. He sat in his car without starting it. His chest felt tight. Not from anger. From clarity. Vanessa hadn't defended him. She had distanced herself. Just enough to protect her own image. He remembered something small. Sophia once standing beside him during a failed presentation years ago. Afterward, when he apologized for embarrassing himself, she had smiled and said, You don't need to win every room. You just need to stay standing. She had stood beside him when he had nothing. Vanessa was stepping away when he had less. The comparison was no longer subtle. It was undeniable. When Daniel returned home late that night, the penthouse felt unfamiliar. Lights off. Silence heavy. He walked into the bedroom and froze. Vanessa's side of the closet was half empty. A suitcase was missing. A short note rested on the dresser. I refuse to shrink with you. Call me when you've rebuilt. No emotion. No apology. Just calculation. Daniel sat on the edge of the bed slowly. 3 years ago, Sophia had left quietly, but with dignity. Now Vanessa was leaving loudly, but with conditions. The difference was clear. One had walked away to heal. The other walked away to protect status. And suddenly, Daniel understood something devastating. He hadn't married his dream woman. He had married his ambition. And ambition, without loyalty, doesn't stay. Weeks passed. Vanessa didn't return. Rumors spread about her attending events alone. Daniel focused on stabilizing his company. But something inside him had shifted permanently. He no longer chased headlines. He no longer felt excitement in luxury rooms. Because now, when he saw articles about Sophia and Alexander expanding internationally, he didn't feel anger. He felt consequence. Sophia had not risen because she found a billionaire. She had risen because she rebuilt herself. Alexander had simply recognized it. And Daniel? He had only recognized it too late. The final blow wasn't losing the investment. It wasn't losing Vanessa. It was losing the understanding of what truly mattered. And realizing it when there was no path back. The applause that followed Alexander's speech felt distant. Muted. As if Daniel were underwater. People resumed talking. Glasses clinked. Music slowly returned. But for Daniel Hayes, the room had shifted into something colder. Smaller. Hostile. He forced himself to smile as a few guests approached him with polite nods. Tough market, one investor said carefully. Next time, another added. Next time. Daniel nodded mechanically. But inside, something had cracked. Vanessa did not wait until they were alone. She leaned close, her smile tight, eyes sharp. You told me this was secured. It was under discussion, Daniel replied quietly. You presented it like confirmation. Her voice had an edge that cut through the music. Lower your voice, he warned. Why? She snapped softly. Everyone already knows. A nearby couple glanced over. Daniel felt heat rise to his face. 3 years ago, he had accused Sophia of embarrassing him at events. Now he stood exposed under the same lights. Vanessa straightened her posture and forced a graceful expression as a photographer passed. Fix this, she whispered through her teeth. Or everything we built collapses. Everything we built. Daniel suddenly realized something painful. What they built was image. Not foundation. Across the ballroom, Sophia stood beside Alexander, engaged in calm conversation with other executives. She was not celebrating. She was not looking at Daniel. She wasn't trying to prove anything. She simply belonged. And that truth hit harder than rejection. Daniel watched as Alexander gently guided Sophia toward a small group of investors. He listened as one of them said, Your company's growth strategy is impressive. Sophia responded with composed confidence. Not once did she mention Daniel. Not once did she look toward him. It was as if he were already part of her past. Irrelevant. And for the first time, Daniel understood the difference between losing a deal and losing respect. The ride home was suffocating. Vanessa stared at her phone, scrolling aggressively. Finally, she spoke. This is trending. Daniel glanced at the screen. Photos of the event were already circulating online. One image stood out. Alexander and Sophia walking together. Headlines forming beneath. New Power Alliance. Rising entrepreneur backed by Reed. Daniel Hayes overlooked in major investment decision. Vanessa locked her phone. You underestimated her, she said flatly. Daniel didn't respond. You thought she would disappear. Still silence. Vanessa turned to face him fully. Tell me something honestly. Did you ever think she had this in her? The question was simple. The answer was complicated. No. He hadn't. He had seen her as supportive. Gentle. Background. He had mistaken quiet strength for weakness. He had mistaken loyalty for limitation. And now she stood beside a billionaire, not as decoration, but as a partner in vision. Daniel felt something unfamiliar rise in his chest. Not jealousy. Not anger. Regret. Deep. Sharp. Unavoidable. Later that night, Vanessa went straight to the bedroom without another word. Daniel remained in the living room. The penthouse felt colder than ever. He loosened his tie and sat in the dark, city lights reflecting against the glass walls. For years, he had told himself a story. That Sophia was holding him back. That Vanessa was an upgrade. That status equaled success. Tonight had rewritten that narrative. Sophia had not chased status. She had built substance. She had not competed publicly. She had grown privately. She had not needed revenge. She had simply moved forward. And that was more powerful than anything he had done. Daniel replayed the moment she looked at him in the ballroom. No hatred. No longing. Just calm detachment. He would have preferred anger. Anger meant emotion. Detachment meant closure. She was no longer his story. He was just a chapter she had finished. And that realization hurt more than losing millions. For the first time since his divorce, Daniel allowed himself to ask the question he had avoided for 3 years. What if I was wrong? What if the woman I called ordinary was actually extraordinary? What if the life I chased was hollow? He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, staring at the marble floor. He remembered her last note. I loved you when you had nothing. I hope the world you're choosing loves you the same way. The world he chose demanded performance. Sophia had offered peace. He closed his eyes. And for the first time in years, Daniel Hayes felt small. Not financially, not socially, but internally. He had won the image. And lost the anchor. The next morning would bring consequences. Vanessa would not tolerate public failure quietly. And the cracks in his dream marriage were about to split wide open. Months later, Daniel Hayes' life had changed in ways he could never have imagined. Vanessa had moved on completely, leaving the penthouse, the designer clothes, the social appearances, and Daniel himself behind. The media barely mentioned her departure. It was as if she had existed only to maintain a facade, and once it shattered, she disappeared. Daniel's company stabilized, but it no longer grew at the speed he had once demanded. Investors were cautious. The press occasionally highlighted his setbacks. And, quietly, he felt the emptiness he had ignored for so long. The luxury, the parties, the curated image, none of it brought satisfaction anymore. Meanwhile, Sophia Carter's life had transformed entirely, but quietly, elegantly, without the need for flash or vindication. She had fully rebuilt her company, her reputation, and her self-respect. Alexander Reed remained by her side, not as a crutch, but as a partner. Together, they expanded her publishing empire internationally, investing in writers who had once been overlooked. Sophia didn't flaunt her success. She didn't seek revenge. She smiled, laughed, and carried herself with a calm confidence that left everyone around her inspired. When people asked about her ex-husband, she simply said, "That chapter is over," and moved on. The elegance of her strength was striking. She had not needed the world to acknowledge her to know her worth, and that was what made her unstoppable. One evening, Daniel walked past a window of a cafe and saw Sophia sitting at a table with Alexander. She was laughing, relaxed, radiant, alive. For a moment, he froze. The memory of all he had lost pressed against him. He remembered the small, quiet woman who once brewed him tea during late-night work sessions. The woman who had supported him when he had nothing. The woman he had called ordinary. He had chased ambition, status, and appearances, believing them to be the ultimate rewards. And in doing so, he had lost someone irreplaceable. That day, Daniel understood the truth that had eluded him for years. Success, wealth, and luxury mean nothing without loyalty, love, and integrity. And the woman he once overlooked had all three, and more. Sophia, standing with Alexander at the cafe window, didn't notice Daniel watching. She didn't need to. Her power was silent but absolute. She had grown, she had healed, and she had built a life that could not be shaken by jealousy or regret. She had won, not because she had married a billionaire, but because she had refused to let anyone else define her worth. Daniel returned to his apartment that evening, empty and quiet. He no longer longed for Sophia. Not exactly. He longed for the wisdom she had carried quietly, the patience, the strength, the dignity, qualities he had once taken for granted. He had married ambition, yes. But ambition without heart leaves a man hollow. And in that emptiness, Daniel finally understood the most painful truth. He once thought he had married his dream woman. But the real treasure he lost was Sophia Carter. And sometimes, the hardest lessons in life come not from failure, but from watching someone you once underestimated rise higher than you ever could.